Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Hello. Hello, it's Professor Fox. And we're going to be reading A Wrinkle in Time. Wrinkle in Time is one of those classics of sci-fi and fantasy. Well, it inspires Doctor Who. All that fun stuff. We're near the end of the book. Very close to the end. Hello, Tara. Yes, we're reading A Wrinkle in Time, and we're on the chapter called It. Not to be confused by Stephen King's It. This is A Wrinkle in Time. Hello, hello, hello. Don't have one. Don't have one, Johnny. Alright, we're reading A Wrinkle in Time. So here we are. Meg rushed at the main imprisoned in the column. But as she reached what seemed to be the open door, she was hurled back as though she had crushed into a brick wall. Calvin caught her. It's just transparent like a glass this time, he told her. We can't go through it. Meg was so sick and dizzy from the impact that she could not answer. Could not answer. For a moment she was afraid that she would throw up or faint. Charles Wallace laughed again. The laugh that was not his own, and it was that saved her, for once more anger overcame her pain and fear. Charles Wallace. Her own real dear Charles Wallace never laughed at her when she was hurt herself. Instead, his arms would go quickly around her neck, and he would press his soft cheek against hers in loving comfort. But the demon Charles Wallace snickered. She turned away from him and looked again at the man in the column. So, Charles Wallace is now possessed by the red-eyed man. "Oh, Father," she whispered longingly. But the man in the column did not move to look at her. The horn-rimmed glasses, once always seemed so much a part of him, were gone, and the expression of his eyes were turned inward, as though he were in deep thought. He had grown a beard, and the silky brown was short, with gray. His hair, too, had not been cut. It wasn't just the overlong hair of the man in the snapshot, a Cape Canaveral. It was pushed back from his high forehead and fell softly across his shoulders so that he looked like someone in another century. "Thank you for that, I appreciate it." Or a shipwrecked sailor, but there was no question, despite the change in him, that he was her father. Her own beloved father. So we found the father that we've been looking for this whole time. "May he looks a mess, doesn't he?" Charles Wallace said in a snicker. Meg swung on him with a sick rage. "Charles, that's father, so what?" Meg turned away from him and held out her arms to the man in the column. "He doesn't see us, Meg," Calvin said gently. Why? "I think it's sort of like those little peepholes they have in apartments in the front doors," Calvin explained. "You know, from inside you can look through and see everything, and from outside you can't see anything at all. And from outside you can't see anything at all. We can see him, but he can see us." "Charles," Meg pleaded, "let me in to Father." "Why?" Charles asked. Meg remembered that when they were in the room with the man with the red eyes, she had knocked Charles Wallace back into himself. When she tackled him and his head cracked in the floor, so she hurled herself at him, but before she could reach him, his fist shot out and punched her hard in the stomach. "Oh, thank you for the gifts. I appreciate you." She hurled herself at him, but before she could reach him, his first shot out, he punched her hard in the stomach. She grasped for a breath. Sickly, she turned away from her brother, back to the transparent wall. There was a cell, there was a column with her father inside. Although she could see him, although she was always close enough to touch him. Although he seemed farther away than he had been when she had pointed him out to Calvin. Okay, here we go. Pictured on the piano, he stood there quietly as though frozen in a column of ice. An expression of suffering her endurance had face was pierced into her heart like an arrow. You say you want to help Father, Charles Wallace's voice came from behind her with no emotion whatsoever. Yes, don't you? Meg demanded, swinging around and glaring at him. But of course, thank you for those gifts. The roses, that's very nice of you. But of course, that's why we are here. Then what do we do? Meg tried to keep the faintness out of her voice, trying to sound drained of feeling as Charles, but nevertheless ending of it sweet. You must do as I do and go into it, Charles said. No, I can see you don't really want to save Father. How me being a zombie save Father? You will just have to take my word for it, Margaret. Come, the cold, flat voice from Charles Wallace. It wants you. It will get you. Don't forget that I too am part of it now. You know I wouldn't have done it if it weren't the right thing to do. Calvin, Meg asked in agony. Well, it really saved Father? But Calvin was paying no attention to her. He seemed to be concentrating with all his power on Charles Wallace. Hello, Ashley. Good to see you. He stared into the pale blue that was all that was left of Charles Wallace's eyes. Thank you for the heart me. And for those I was spirit too delicate to act her earthly. She did confine thee into a Calvin plane. He whispered. And Meg recognized Miss Who's words to him. For a moment, Charles Wallace seemed to listen. How are you doing, Ashley? We're reading A Wrinkle in Time. We're almost near the end. Then he struggled and turned away. Calvin followed him, trying to keep his eyes focused on Charles. If you want a witch, Charles said, it's the witch, not Our Lady's. Good thing I had the Tempest at school this year, isn't Charles? It was the witch who put Ariel in the Colvin Pine, wasn't it? Yes, the Tempest. The Tempest was from William Shakespeare. Yes, I'm glad you're doing great. I'm doing great too. Having fun here. Felt like reading today. Charles Wallace's voice seemed to come from a great distance. Stopped staring at him, breathing quickly with excitement. Calvin continued to pin Charles Wallace with a stare. You like Ariel and the Colvin playing. Charles and I can let you out. Look at me. Charles, come back to us. Again, the shudder went through. Thank you for your awesomes. I like it because it's a cat. As you can tell, I might like cats a little bit. Maybe a little too much. But, hey, cats are awesome. Again, Charles shuddered, and then it was as though an invisible hand had smacked against his chest and knocked him. And he smacked against him with this which Calvin had held him was broken. Charles sat there on the floor at the corridor, whimpering, not a small boy sound, but a fearful animal noise. Calvin, Meg turned on him, clasping her hands intensely. Try to get Father. Calvin shook his head. Charles almost came out. I almost did it. He almost came back to us. Try Father, Meg said again. How? Your Colvin plane. Isn't Father imprisoned in a Colvin plane? Even more than Charles? Look at him and look at the column there. Get him out, Calvin. Calvin spoke in an exhausted way. Meg, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get in. Meg, they're asking too much of us. Miss Who's spectacles, Meg said suddenly. Miss Who had told her to use them only as a last resort. So Meg got spectacles that she was going to use from those other witches that were in the book previous. Miss Witch, Miss Who, and Miss What's-It. Which one of them is this creature here. Not quite a centaur, not quite a Pegasus. You know, it's a interesting looking creature. Some could say it was an angel. She looked out the column, and there was Charles Wallace in the cell, an alien expression, distorted his face. She turned back to her father. There was no more time for greeting, for joy or explanation. "We have to go," Charles Wallace said, her words tense quickly. Her father's hand was moving gropingly over her face, and as she felt the touch on his strong, gentle fingers, she realized with a flooding of horror that she could see him, that she could see Charles in the cell and Calvin in the corridor. But her father could not see them, could not see her. She looked at him in panic, but his eyes were the same steady blue that she remembered. She moved her hand briskly across his line of vision, but he did not blink. "Father," she cried. "Father, can you see me?" His arms went around her again in comforting gesture. "No, Meg, but Father, I can see you." Her voice trailed off suddenly. She shoved Miss Hugh's glasses down her nose and peered over them, and immediately she was in complete and utter darkness. She snatched them off her face and thrust them at her father. "Here!" His finger closed about the fellow. "Darling," he said, "I'm afraid your glasses won't help, but they're Miss Hugh's. They aren't mine," she explained, not realizing that her words would sound like gibberish to him. "Please try them, Father, please." She waited while she felt him fumbling in the dark. "Can you see now?" she asked. "Can you see now, Father?" "Yes," he said. "Yes, the wall is transparent now. How extraordinary. I could almost see the atoms are rearranging." His voice had his old familiar sound of excitement and discovery. It was the way he sounded sometimes when he came home from his laboratory after a good day and began to tell his wife about his work. Then he cried out, "Charles! Charles! Charles Wallace!" And then, "Meg, what's happened to him? What's wrong? That is Charles, isn't it?" "It has him, Father," she explained tensely. "He's gone into it, Father. We have to help him." For a long moment, Miss Murray was silent. The silence was filled with the words he was thinking, and he would not speak out loud to his daughter. Then he said, "Meg, I'm in prison here. I've been for. Father, these walls, you can go through them. I came through the column to get into you. It was Miss Hugh's glasses." Miss Murray did not stop to ask who Miss Hugh was. He slapped his hand against the translucent column. "It seems solid enough." "But I got in," Meg repeated. "I'm here. Maybe the glasses help the atoms rearrange. Try it, Father." She waited breathlessly, and after a moment she realized that she was alone in the column. She put out her hands in the darkness and felt its smooth surface curving about her on all sides. She seemed utterly alone, the silence and darkness impenetrable forever. She fought down panic until she heard her father's voice coming in very faintly. "I'm coming back to you, Meg." It was almost a tangible feeling that the atoms of the strange material seemed to part, to let him through her. And in the breech house at Cape Coronado, there had been a curtain between the dining room and made of long shades of rice. It looked like a solid curtain, but you could walk right through it. At first, Meg had flinched each time she came up to the curtain, but gradually she got used to it and would go running. "Oh, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Thank you. We arranged it in somewhere for the same fashion." "Put your arms around my neck, Meg," Miss Murray said. "Hold on to me tightly. Close your eyes and don't be afraid." He picked her up and she wrapped her long legs around his waist and clung to his neck with Miss Hugh's spectacles. But she felt only a faint darkness and coldness as she moved through the column. Without the glasses, she felt the same awful calmness she had felt when she tasered through the outer darkness. Whatever the black thing was to which Comataz had submitted, it was within as without the planet. For a moment, it seemed that the chill darkness would tear her from her father's arms. She tried to scream, but within the icy horrors, no sound was possible. Her father's arms tightened about her, and she clung to his neck in the stranglehold. But there was no longer lost in panic. She knew that if her father could not get her through the wall, he would stay with her rather than leave her. She knew that she was safe as long as she was in his arms. Then they were outside the column, rose up in the middle of the room, crystals clear and empty. Meg blinked at the blurry figures of Charles and her father. She wondered why they did not clear. Then she grabbed her own glasses out of the pocket and put them on, and her myopic eyes were able to focus. Charles Wallace was tapping one foot impatiently against the floor. "It is not pleased," he said. "It is not pleased at all." Miss Murray released Meg and knelt it in front of the little boy. "Charles," his voice was tender. "Charles Wallace, what do you want? I'm your father, Charles. Look at me." The pale blue eyes seemed to focus on Mr. Murray. face. "Hi, Pop. Come at insolent vice." "That isn't Charles," Meg cried. "Oh, Father, Charles isn't like that. It has him." "Yes," Miss Murray sounded tired. "I see." He held his arms out. "Charles, come here. Father will make it all right." Meg thought. Everything will be all right. Charles did not move toward the outreached arms. He stood a few feet away from his father. It did not look at him. "Look at me," Mr. Murray commanded. "No." Mr. Murray's voice began harsh. "When you speak to me, you'll say no, Father, or no, sir. Come off it, Pop." Come the cold voice from Charles Wallace. Charles Wallace, who outside Kamataz had been strange, had been different, but never rude. "You're not the boss around here." Meg could see Calvin pondering again on the glass wall. "Calvin," she cried. "He can't hear you," Charles said. He made a horrible face at Calvin, and then he thumbed his nose. "Who's Calvin?" Mr. Murray asked. "He's—" Meg started, but Charles Wallace cut her off. You'll have to defer your explanation. Let's go." "Go where?" "To it." "No," Mr. Murray said. "You can't take Meg there." "Oh, can't I?" "No, you cannot. You're my son, Charles, and I'm afraid you'll have to do as I say." "But he isn't Charles," Meg cried in anguish. Why didn't her father understand? "Charles is nothing like that, Father." "You know he's nothing like that. He was only a baby when I left," Mr. Murray said heavily. "Father, it's talking through Charles. It isn't Charles. He's been bewitched." "Fairy tales again," Charles said. "You know it, Father," Meg asked. "Yes, I have seen it." "Yes, Meg." Again his voice sounded exhausted. "Yes, I have." He turned to Charles. "You know she wouldn't be able to hold out." "Exactly," Charles said. "Father, you can't talk to him as though he were Charles. Ask Calvin. Calvin will tell you." "Come along," Charles Wallace said. "We must go." He held up his hand carelessly and walked out the cell, and there was nothing for Meg and Mr. Murray to do but follow. As they stepped into the corridor, Meg caught at her father's sleeve. Calvin, here's Father." Calvin turned anxiously toward them. His freckles and his hair stood up brilliantly against his white face. "Make your introductions later," Charles Wallace said. "It does not like to be kept waiting." He walked down the corridor, his gait seeming to get more jerky with each step. The other followed, walking rapidly to keep up. "Does your father know about the Miss W's?" Calvin asked Meg. "There hasn't been time for anything. Everything awful disappeared, settled like a stone in the pit of Meg's stomach. She had been so certain that the moment she found her father, everything would be all right. Everything would be settled. All the problems would be taken out of her hands. She would no longer be responsible for anything. And instead of this happy, expected outcome, they seemed to be encountering all kinds of new troubles." "He doesn't understand about Charles," she whispered to Calvin, looking unhappily at her father's back as he walked behind the little boy. "Where are we going?" Calvin asked. "To it, Calvin." "I don't want to go. I can't." She stopped, but Charles continued his jerky pace. "We can't leave Charles," Calvin said. "They wouldn't like it." "Who wouldn't?" "Miss Whatsit and company." "But they betrayed us. They brought us here to this terrible place and abandoned us." Calvin looked at her, surprised. "You sat down and gave up, if you like," he said. "I'm sticking with Charles." He ran to keep up with Charles and Wallace and Mr. Murray. "I didn't mean—" Meg startled and pounded after them. Just as she caught up with them, Charles Wallace stopped and raised his hand, and there was an elevator again. It was yellow. Meg felt her stomach jerk as a swift descent began. They were silent until the motion stopped, silent as they followed Charles Wallace through the long corridors and out into the street. The Central Intelligence Building loomed up stark and angrily behind them. "Do something," Meg implored her father silently. "Do something. Help! Save us!" They turned a corner, and at the end of the street was a strange, dome-like building. Its walls glowed with a flicker of violent flame, and silvery roof pulsed with ominous light. The light was neither warm nor cold, but it seemed to reach out and touch them. This Meg was sure. It must be where it was waiting for them. They moved down the street more slowly now, and as they came closer to the dome building and the violent flickering seemed to reach out to envelop them, to suck them in, they were inside. Meg could feel a rhythmic pulsing. It was a pulsing not only about her, but in her as well, as though the rhythm of her heart and lungs were so longer her own, but it was being worked by some outside force. The coldest she had come to the feeling before was when she had a particular artificial respiration with the Girl Scouts. And the leader, an immensely powerful woman, had been working on Meg. Out goes the bad air, in comes the good. While they were heavy hands, press release, Meg gasped, trying to breathe at her own normal rate. But the extrusional beat within the without continued for a moment. She could not neither move nor look around to see what was happening to the others. She simply had to stand there, trying to balance her health into the artificial rhythm of her heart and lungs. Her eyes seemed to swim into the sea of red. Then things began to clear, and she could breathe without gasping like a breached fish. And she could look about to the great circular dome building. It was completely empty except for the pulse, which seemed a tangible thing, and around, exactly at the center on the dais, lay what? Meg could not tell, and yet she knew that it was from that the rhythm came. She stepped forward tentatively. She felt that she was beyond fear now. Charles Wallace was no longer Charles Wallace. Her father had been found, but he had not made everything all right. Instead, everything was worse than ever, and her adored father was bearded and thin and white and not opulent. After all, no matter what happened next, things could be no more terrible or frightening than they already were. Yes. Yeah, it comes to life. There comes a time in every child's life where you find out that your parents are not infallible and they're not the superheroes that you thought they were. This is that moment for Meg. Her dad, she thought once she met her dad and found him again, everything would be okay, and it's not. So this is an important time in her life. As she continued to step slowly forward, at last she realized what the thing on the dais was. It was a brain. A disembodied brain. An oversized brain just enough larger than normal to be completely revolting and terrifying. A living brain. A brain that pulsed and quivered and seized in command. No wonder the brain was called It. It was the most horrible, the most repellent thing she had ever seen. Far more nauseating than anything she had ever imagined with her conscious mind, or had ever tormented her in most terrible nightmares. But as she had felt she was beyond fear, she was beyond screaming. She looked at Charles Wallace, and he stood there, turned towards It, his jaw hanging slightly loose, his vacant blue eyes slowly twirled. Oh yes, things could always be worse. Those twirling eyes within Charles' soft, round face made Meg icy cold inside out. She looked away from Charles Wallace and at her father. Her father stood there with Miss Who's glasses still perched on his nose. Did he remember that he had them on? And he shouted to Calvin, "Don't give in!" "I won't," helped Meg. Calvin yelled back. It was absolutely silent within the dome, and yet Meg realized that the only way to speak was to shout with all the power possible. For everyone she looked, everywhere she turned with a rhythm, and as it continued to control the soul and of the heart, the intake and outlet of her brain, the red miasma began to creep before her eyes again, and she was afraid that she was going to lose consciousness. And if she did that, she would be completely in the power of It. Miss Whatsit had said, "Meg, I give you your faults." What here her greatest faults? Anger, impatience, stubbornness. Yes, it was her faults that she turned to save herself now. With an immense effort, she tried to breathe against the rhythm of It, but its power was too strong. Each time she managed to take a breath out of rhythm, an iron hand seemed to squeeze her heart and lungs. Then she remembered that when she had been standing before the man with red eyes, and the man with red eyes had been intoning the multiplications table at them, Charles Wallace had fought against his power by shouting out nursery rhymes, and Calvin by the Gettysburg Address. "Georgie Porridge, Putty Pie," she yelled, "kissed the girl and made them cry." That was no good. It was too easy for a nursery rhyme to fall into the rhythm of It. She didn't know the Gettysburg Address. How did the Declaration of Independence begin? She had memorized it only that winter, and not because she was required at school, but simply because she liked it. "We hold these truths to be self-evident," she shouted, "that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." As she cried out the words, she felt mind moving in and on her. It felt it seizing, squeezing her brain that she realized that Charles Wallace was speaking of being spoken through by it. But that's exactly what we have on Comatose. Completely equality. Everybody exactly alike. For a moment, her brain reeled with confusion. Then came a moment of blazing truth. No, she cried triumphantly. Like and equal are not the same thing at all. Good girl, Meg, her father shouted at her. But Charles Wallace continued as though they had no interruption. Comatose, all are equal. In Comatose, everybody is the same as everybody else. But it gave her no argument, provided no answer, as she held on her moment in revelation. Like and equal are two entirely different things. For the moment, she had escaped from the power of it. But how? She knew that her own puny little brain was no match for its greatness, boldness, pulsing, withering mass on the round dais. She shuddered as she looked at it. In the lab at the school, there was a human brain preserved in formaldehyde, and the seniors prepared for college had to take it out and look at it and study it. Meg had felt that when that day came, she would never be able to endure it. But now she thought that if only she had a dissecting knife, she would slash at it, cutting ruthlessly through the symbrium. Words spoke within her directly this time, not for Charles. Don't you realize that if you destroy me, you will also destroy your brother? If that great brain was cut, she was crushed. Would ever mind under its control and Comatose unalive too? Charles Wallace and the man with the red eyes and the man who ran the #1 spelling machine on the second grade level. And all the children playing ball and skipping the rope and all the mothers and all the men and women going in and out of the buildings. Was their life completely dependent on it? Were they beyond all possible of starvation? She felt the brain reaching at her again as she let her stubborn control ship. Red frog glazed her eyes. Faintly she heard her voices through this. She knew it was a shouting at the top of her lungs. The periodic table of elements, Meg saying it. A picture flashed in her mind of winter evenings spent sitting before the open fire and studying with her father. Hydrogen, helium. She started obediently. Keep them in their proper atomic order. What next? She knew. Yes, lithium, beryllium, brom, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. She shouted the words, and as her father turned away from it, neon, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, silicon, phosphorus. Too rheumatic, her father shouted. What's the square root of 5? For a moment she was able to concentrate. Rack her brains yourself. Meg, don't let it rack them. The square root of 5 is 2.236. She cried triumphantly, because 2.336 equals 5. What's the square root of 7? That's the square root of 7 is... She broke off. She wasn't holding it. It was going at her, and she couldn't concentrate. Not even on math, and soon she too would be absorbed in it. She would be it. Tesser, sure. She heard Calvin's voice through the red darkness. Tesser! She felt her father grab her by the wrist, and there was a terrible jerk, and they seemed to break every bone in her body, and then a dark nothing tethering. If tethering with Miss Whatsit, Miss Who, and Miss Which had been a strange and fearful experience, it was nothing like tethering with her father. After all, Miss Which was experienced that. And Mr. Murray, how did he know anything about it at all? Meg felt she was being torn apart by a whirlwind. She was lost in agony, a pain that finally dissolved into darkness of complete unconsciousness. All right. Okay. Got a few more pages to go. Yeah, how are you liking A Wrinkle in Time so far? You know, if you do like this book, you can buy it at Books and Mortar. It's a interesting book about good versus evil, about free will versus destiny. Do we have free will to act, or are things already chosen for us? Also kind of got a little bit of a 1984 vibe of Big Brother watching you. If you ever read the book The Giver, there's feelings of that too. Are things preordained, or are they able to be changed? The right to rebel versus to conform. When you get into this planet that they're on and everything is similar, it kind of feels like a suburb or something like that. But this definitely gives me the feeling of a Doctor Who episode. Other books that I would recommend that are similar to this is The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. Also a classic in juvenile fiction that's worth looking into. All right. So now we're on to the next chapter called Absolute Zero. The first sign of returning to consciousness was cold. Then the sound, she was aware of voices that seemed to be traveling through her across an arctic waste. Slowly, the icy sounds cleared as she realized that she was voiced beyond to her father and Calvin. She did not hear Charles Wallace. She tried to open her eyes, but the lids were not moved. She tried to slit them up, but she could not stir. She struggled to turn over, to move her hands, her feet, but nothing happened. She knew what she had, a body, but it was as lifeless as marble. She heard Calvin's voice. Her heart is beating so slowly, her father's voice, but it's beating. She's alive, barely. We couldn't find a heartbeat at first. We thought she was unalived. Yes, and then we could feel her heart, or very faintly the beats are very far apart, and then they got stronger, so all we had to do is wait. Her father's words sounded brittle in her ears, as though they were being chipped out of ice. Calvin, yes, you're right, sir. She wanted to call out to them. I'm alive. I'm very much alive, only I've been turned to stone. But she could not call out to anyone. Calvin's voice again. Anyhow, you got her away from it. You got us both away from what we could have gone on holding it. It's so much powerful and strong. How did we stay out, sir? How did we manage as long as we did? Her father, because it's completely unused to being refused. That's the only reason I could keep from being absorbed too. No mind has been tried to hold out against it for so many thousands of centuries that certain centers have become soft and apertured through a lack of use. If you haven't come to me when you did, I'm sure how much longer I would have lasted. I was on the point of giving in. Calvin, oh no, sir, her father. Yes, nothing seemed important any more but rest, of course. It offered me complete rest. It had almost come to the conclusion that I was wrong to fight, that it was right after all, and everything I believed and most passionately was nothing but a madman's dream. But then you and Meg came in to me, broke through my prison, and hope and faith returned. Calvin, sir, why are you here on Comatose at all? Was there a particular reason for going there? Her father was a frigid laugh. Going to Comatose? I was completely accident. I never intended me to leave on our solar system. I was heading to Mars. Tessering is even more complicated than we had expected, Calvin. Sir, how was it able to get Charles Wallace's before we got Meg and me? Her father, from what you told me, is because Charles Wallace thought he could deliberately go into it in return. He trusted too much of his own strength. Listen, I think the heartbeat is getting stronger. His words no longer sounded to be quite frozen. Was his words that were ice in his ears? Why did she hear only her father and Calvin? Why didn't Charles Wallace speak? Silence, I looked, silence. Then Calvin's voice again. Can't you do anything? Can't we look for help? Do we just have to go on waiting? Her father, we can't leave her, and we must stay together. We must not be afraid to take time. You mean we rushed into things on Comatose too fast, and Charles Wallace rushed. It's too fast, and that's why we got caught. Maybe I'm not sure I didn't know enough. Time is different on Comatose anyhow. Our time is inadequate, though it is at least straightforward, and I may not be even fully one-dimensional because it cannot move back and forth on its line. Only ahead. And by last, it comes to the direction time on Comatose seemed to be inverted into itself. So I have no idea whether I was imprisoned in the column for centuries or I was only there for minutes. I think I feel a pulse in her wrist now. Meg, could you not feel his fingers against her wrist? She could not feel her wrist at all. Her body was still stone, but her mind was beginning. Oh, thank you for that. That was the first night star I've ever gotten. Her voices started again. Calvin about the project for We're All Alone. Her father, no, there was half a dozen of us working on it. And a disarray, a number of others. Don't you know about certainly? We weren't the only notion to investigate along the line. It's not really a new idea, but we did have a very hard time not to know. abroad that we were trying to make it predictable. Did you come to Comatose alone, or were there others with you? I came alone, you see, Calvin. There was no way to try it out ahead with rats or monkeys or dogs, and we have no idea whether it would really work, to whether it would be completely bloody descended. Playing with time and space is a dangerous game. But what are you saying? I wasn't the first. We drew straws, and I wasn't second. What happened to the first man? We don't look. Did her eyelids move? Silence then. No, it was only a shadow, but I did blink. Meg tried to tell them. I'm sure I did, and I can hear you do something. But there was only other long silence, during which perhaps they were looking at her, watching her for another shadow, another flicker, that she heard her father's voice again, quiet. We drew straws, and I was second. We know Hank went. We saw him go, and we saw him vanish right in front of us, right? He was there, and then he wasn't. We were to wait for a year for his return or some message. We waited nothing. Calvin, his voice creaking. Jeepers, sir, you must have been in sort of a flap. Her father, yes, it's a frightening as well as I am exciting thing to discover that the matter and energy are the same thing, that the size is an illusion, and that time is a material substance. We can know this, but it's far more than we can understand with our puny little brains. Then we can understand with our puny little brains. I think you will be able to comprehend far more, and I, and Charles Wallace, even more than you. Yes. Hello, Kara. Nice to see you. We're reading A Wrinkle in Time. Yes, but what happened, please, sir, after the first man? Meg could fear her father's sigh. Then it was my turn, I went. And here I am. I'm wiser and humbler man. I'm sure I hadn't gone 2 years. Now that you've come, I made some hope that I may be able to return in time. One thing I have to tell the others is that we know nothing. Calvin, what do you mean, sir? Her father, just what I say. You were children playing with dynamite in our own mad rush. We plunged into this before. With a desperate effort, Med made a sound. It wasn't very loud, but it was a sound. Mr. Murray stopped. Hush! Listen. Meg made a strange choking sound. She found that she could pull her open her eyelids. They felt heavier than marble, but she managed to raise them. Thank you for the cats. As you can tell, I like cats. Yes, she blinked slowly and with a difficulty. Meg, her father said, Meg, are you all right? Her tongue felt like a stone tug in her mouth. But she managed to croak, I can't move. Try, Calvin urged. She sounded now as though he was very angry with her. Wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers. I can't. Where's Charles Wells? Her words were blunt by the stone tongue. Perhaps they could not understand her, for there was no answer. We were knocked out for a minute, too. Calvin was saying, you'll be all right, Meg. Don't get panicky. He was crouched over her, and through his voice, he continued to sound cross. He was peering at her with anxious eyes. She knew that she must still have her glasses on because she could see him clearly. His freckles, his stubborn black lashes, the bright blue of his eyes. Her father was kneeling on her other side. The roundness of her Miss Who's glasses still blurred his eyes. He took one of her hands and rubbed it between his. Can you feel my fingers? He sounded quite calm, as though there was nothing extraordinary in having and completely paralyzed. At the quiet of his voice, she felt calmer. Then she saw that there was a great drops of sweat standing out on his forehead, and she noticed vaguely that she was gentle breeze that touched her cheek. She was clue at first. She was words that had been frozen, and now the wind was mild, and with his icy cold have warm. Can you feel my fingers? He asked again. Yes. Now she could feel a pressure against her wrists, but she could not nod. Where's Charles Wallace? Her words were a little less blurred. Her tongue, her lips were beginning to feel cold and numb, as though she had been given a massive dose of Narcan. At the dentist, she realized with a start that her body and limbs were cold, that only though it was so warm, she was frozen from head to toe, and it was this that had made her father's words seem like ice that had paralyzed her. Thank you, Mandy. I'm frozen, she said faintly, comatose. Hadn't been this cold. I cold and cut deeper, and then she went on the bitterness of winter days at home. She was always from it, but this unexplained ickness was almost as bad. Her father had not saved her. Now she was able to look around a little more, and everything she could see, the rusty and gray. There was these trees edging and filled with sleigh, and these leaves and trees. Yes, I'm having a great weekend. Thank you. There were plants that might have been flowers, except they were dull and gray. In contrast to the dumbness of color, to the cold that numbed her, The air was filled with delicate spring-like fragrances, almost imperceptible as it blew softly against her face. She... All right, washing dishes. Good to see it. Good to say hello, Lay, almost as he blew softly against her face. She looked at her father and Calvin. They were both in their shirt sleeves, and they looked perfectly comfortable. It was she wrapped in her clothes who was frozen too solid even to shiver. "Why am I so cold?" she asked. "Where's Charles Wallace?" They did not answer. "Father, where are we?" Mr. Murray looked at her sober. "I don't know, Meg. I didn't tesser very well. I must have overshot somehow. We're not on comatose. I don't know where we are. I think you're so cold because we went through the black thing, and I thought for a moment it was going to tear you away from me." "Is this a dark planet?" Slowly her tongue was gnaw. Her words were less blurred. "I don't think so," Mr. Murray said, "but I know there's little about anything that I can be sure. You shouldn't have tried to test her then." She had never spoken to her father in this way before. The words seemed hardly to be hers. Calvin looked at her, shaking her head. "It was the only thing to do. At least it got us out of comatosis. Why did we go without Charles Wallace? Did we just leave him there?" The words that were not really hers came out cold and accusing. "We didn't just leave him," her father said. "Remember that the human brain is a very delicate organism, and if I can be easily damaged." "See, Meg," Calvin crouched over her, tense and worried. "If your father had tried to yank Charles away when he was tessered us, and if it had kept grabbing hold of Charles, it might have been too much for him. And we'd have lost him forever, and we had to do something right then. Why? It was taking us. You and I were slipping, and if your father had gone trying to help us, he wouldn't have been able to hold out much longer. Neither." "You told him to tesser, Meg?" charged Calvin. "There isn't any question to blame," Miss Murray cut in severely. "Can you move it yet?" All Meg's faults were outermost in her now, and they were no longer helping her. "No, and you'd better take me back to comatosis and Charles quickly. You're supposed to be able to help." Disappointed was as dark and convulsant in her as the black thing. The ugly words trembled from her cold lips, even as she herself could not believe that it was to her father and her beloved, longed-for father that she was talking to this way. If her tears had still been frozen, they would have been gushing from her eyes. She had found her father and had not made everything all right. Everything kept getting worse and worse. If the long search for her father was ended and it wasn't able to overcome all their difficulty, there was nothing to be guaranteed that it would all come out right in the end. There was nothing left to be hoped for. She was frozen, and Charles Wallace was being devoured by it, and her impotent father was doing nothing. She teetered on the seesaw of love and hate, and the black thing pushed her down into hate. "You don't even know where we are," she cried out at her father. "Well, never see Mother on her twins again. We don't know where Earth is, or even where comatose is. We're lost in space. What are we going to do?" She did not realize that she was as much to the power of the black thing as Charles Wallace. Mr. Murray bent over her, massaging her cold fingers. She could not see his face. "My daughter, I am not Miss Whatsit. I am not a Miss Whatsit, a Miss Who, or Miss Witch. Yes, Calvin had told me everything he could. I am a human being, and I am a very feeble one. But I agree with Calvin. We were sent here for something, and we know that. All things work together for good to them that love God, to know them who are called according to his purpose." "The black thing," Meg cried out to them. "Why did you let it almost get me?" "You never tessered as well as the rest of us," Calvin reminded her. "It never bothered Charles and me as much as it did." "He shouldn't have taken me then," Meg said, "until he learned to do it better." Neither had her father nor Calvin. Her father continued his gentle message. Her fingers came back to life with their tingling pain. "You're hurting me!" Then she feeling again. Her father said quietly, "I'm afraid it was going to hurt, Meg." The piercing pain moved slowly up her arms, began her toes and legs. She started to cry out against her father, with Calvin saying, "Look!" Coming toward them, moving into silence across the bare grass with three figures. What were they? On Uriel there had been the magnificent creature, and common as the inhabitants had least resembled people. What are these three strange things approaching? They were the same dull gray as the flowers, and they hadn't walked. The way they seemed like animals. They moved directly toward the three human beings. They had 4 arms and far more than 5 fingers to each hand, and the fingers were not fingers but long waving tentacles. They had heads and they had faces, but they were the faces of creatures on Uriel had seemed far more than human faces. They seemed for less. Whether the feathers would not normally be there were several indentations in the place of ears and hair or more tentacles. They were tall. Meg realized as they came close they were taller than any man. They had no eyes, just soft indentations. Meg's rigid frozen body tried to shudder with terror, but instead of the shudder, all that came was pain. She moaned. The thing stood over them, appeared to be looking down at them, except that they had no eyes with which to see. Miss Murray continued to kneel by Meg, massaging her. "He's unaliving us, bringing us here," Meg fought. "I'll never see Charles Wallace again, or Mother, or the twins." Calvin rose to his feet. He bowed to the beast as though they could see him. He said, "How do you do, sir, ma'am?" "Who are you?" the tallest of the beasts said. His voice was neither hostile nor welcoming. It came not from the mouth-like indentation of the furry face, but from rather the tentacles. "They'll eat us," Meg fought wildly. "They're making me hurt. My toes, my fingers, I hurt." Calvin answered the beast's question. We're here from Earth. I'm not sure how we got here. We've had an accident. This girl is paralyzed. She can't move. She's terribly cold. We think that's why she can't move." One of them came up to Meg and squatted down on his huge hunches beside her, and she felt utterly loathing and resolving as reached on out to his tentacle touched her face. But with the tentacle came the same delicate fragrance that moved across her with a breeze. She felt a soft, tingling warmth go all through her that momentarily assumed her pain. She felt suddenly sleepy. "I must look at it strange, so it was look to me." She fought drowsily, and then she realized with a shock that, of course, the beast couldn't see her at all. Nothing less a reassuring sense of safety flowed for her with this warmth, which continued to step deep into her as the beast touched her. Then it picked her up, cradling her into two arms and forearms. Miss Murray stood up quickly. "What are you doing?" "Taking my child." All right. We'll finish up that next chapter. So, yeah. Again, we're coming across strange creatures. Again, this comes out to like a strange Doctor Who episode. And we had a little thing of possibly changing into stone. Wrinkle in Time was written in, I believe, 1962. Yeah, it was written in 1962, which this is probably one of the ancestor to the Doctor Who series. It has a lot of that, and they go through like the tessering thing. Pretty cool. Thank you, Mandy, for that. Thank you for doing my goal. I appreciate you. I like those cat things. Yeah. I like it. There. But yeah. Wrinkle in Time, other books like Wrinkle in Time, where we're talking about. So this has got that whole undertone of young individuals going through life problems and learning through mystical means. So, like, this is a good predecessor to Harry Potter. Another one, you have The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is also about young juveniles going through mystical worlds and solving a big good versus evil problem. So, this is one of the predecessors to that. Wizard of Oz, again, another juvenile fiction that takes place in a wonderful world, and they solve a big problem, which is the Wicked Witch. So, yeah. A very typical type of story. But it has this really cool science in it. We talked about the periodic table. We talked about string theory, which is really interesting in 1962. And I'll show it to you here. This is really cool. In the story, you have an ant, right? And if an ant were to cross that where the fingers are, it would take that ant a very long time to get to the other side. But if you fold it, the ant can get there instantaneously. So that's what the space-time travel we're talking about. Using different dimensions. We start with the first dimension, double it, third dimension. And they're talking about going through the fifth dimension, which is the tessering. Time and space. But yeah, got a lot of scientific stuff in this book. All right, we'll continue. I'm going to try to finish this book today. Ant Beast is the name of the chapter. Ant Beast. No, Mr. Murray said sharply. Please put her down. A sense of amazement seemed to emanate from the beast. The tallest one, who seemed to be the spokesman, said, We frighten you? What are you going to do with us? Mr. Murray asked. The beast said, I'm sorry, we communicate better with the other one. He turned toward Calvin. Who are you? I'm Calvin O'Coffey. What's that? I'm a boy. A young man? You too are afraid. I'm not sure. Tell me, the beast said. What do you suppose you'd do if 3 of us suddenly arrived on your home planet? Shoot you, I guess, Calvin admitted. Then isn't that what we should do with you? Calvin's freckles seemed to deepen. But he answered quietly, I'd rather you didn't. I mean, the Earth's my home, and I'd rather be there than anywhere in the world. I mean, the universe, and I can't wait to get back. But we make some awful bloopers there. The smallest beast, the one holding Meg, said, and perhaps that aren't used to the visitors from other planets. Used to it, Calvin exclaimed. We've never had any as far as I know. Why? I don't know. The middle beast, a terminator at his words, said, You aren't from a dark planet, are you? No, Calvin shook his head firmly, though. Beast couldn't see him. We're shadowed. But we're fighting the shadow. The beast holding him Meg questioned, You 3 are fighting. Yes, Calvin, yes, now that we know about it. The tall one turned back to Mr. Murray, speaking sternly. You're the oldest man from where we have come from. Mr. Murray answered steadily. From a planet called Comatose. There was a matter from there 3 beasts. We did not belong there, Mr. Murray said, slowly and distinctly. We were strangers there, and we were here. I was prisoner there. And there were 3 children rescued me. My youngest son, my baby, and he's still there, trapped in the dark mind of it. Meg tried to twist around the beast's arms to glare at her father and Calvin why they were there being so frank. Weren't they aware of the danger? But again, her anger dissolved into the gentle warmth from the tentacles flowed for her. She realized that she couldn't move her fingers and toes with compensated freedom, and the pain was no longer acute. We must take the child back with us, the beast holding her said. Meg shouted at her father, Don't leave me! The way you left Charles with this burst of terror, a spasm of pain wrecked her body, and she gasped. Stop fighting, the beast told her. You make it worse. Relax. That's what it said, Meg cried. Father Calvin, help! The beast turned towards Calvin and Mr. Murray. This child is in danger. You must trust us. We have no alternative, Mr. Murray said. Can you save her? Thank you for the gift. I think so. May I stay with her? No, but you will not be far away. We feel that you are hungry, tired, and that you would like to bathe and rest in this little what the world is. The beast cracked the tentacles at Calvin. Girl, Calvin said, this little girl needs prominent and special care. The coldness of what is called it. The black thing. The black thing, yes, the black thing burns useless and is counter-treated properly. The 3 beasts soon stood around Meg, and it seemed that they were feeling into her with the soft, waving tentacles. The movement of her tentacles was rhythmic and feeling as of the dance of undersea plant. And lying there, cradled in the 4 strange arms, Meg, desperate herself, felt a sense of security that there was deeper than anything she had known. Hello, Stephen! Thank you for the gift, Stephen. Security that was deeper than anything she had known since the days that she was lay in her father's arms in the old rocking chair, and she was slung to sleep with her father's help. She had been able to resist it. Now she could hold on no longer. She leaned her head against the beast's chest and realized that the gray body was covered with the softest, most delicate fur imaginable, and the fur had the same beautiful odor as the air. Yes, book talk. We're reading A Wrinkle in Time. A little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of fantasy. I believe it might be the predecessor to Doctor Who, because this is what this kind of feels like to me. I hope I didn't smell awful to it, she thought, but then she knew with a deep sense of comfort that even if she did smell awful, the beast would forgive her. As the tall figure cradled her, she could feel the frigid stiffness of her body relaxing against it. This bliss could not come to her from it like it. It could only give pain, never relieve it. The beasts must be good. They had to be good. She sighed deeply like a small child, and suddenly she was asleep. And when she came to herself again, there was in the back of her mind a memory of pain, of agonizing pain, but the pain was over now, and her body was lapped in some comfort. She was lying on something wonderfully soft in a closed chamber. It was dark. All she could see were occasionally tall, moving shadows, which she realized were the beasts walking about. She had been stripped of her clothes, and something warm, piquant, was gently being rubbed into her body. She sighed and stretched and discovered that she could stretch. She could move again. She was no longer paralyzed, and her body was bathed in waves of warmth. Her father had not saved her. The beast had. "So you are awake, little one?" The words came greatly through her ears. "What a funny little tadpole you are. Is the pain gone now? All gone? Are you warm and alive again?" "Yes, I'm fine," she struggled to sit up. "No, lie still, little one. You must not exert yourself as yet. We have a fur garment on you in a movement, and then we will feed you. You must not even try to feed yourself. You must be as an infant again." The black thing does not relinquish the victims willingly. "Where are your father and Calvin? Have they gone back for Charles Wallace?" "They are eating and resting," the beast said, "and we are trying to learn about each other and see what is best to help. We feel now that you are not dangerous and that we will be allowed to help you." "Why is this dark in here?" Meg asked. She tried to look around, but all she could see was shadows. Nevertheless, there was a sense of openness and a feel of gentle breeze moving lightly about, and kept the darkness from being oppressive. Perplexity came to her from the beast. "What is this dark? Why is this light? We do not understand. Your father and the boy, Calvin, have asked this too. They say that it is night now on our planet and that they cannot see. They have told us that our atmosphere is what they call opaque, so that the stars are not visible, and that they are surprised that we have no stars. That we know that their music and the movements of their dance far better than the beings like you who spend hours studying them through what you call telescope. We do not understand what that means to see." "Well, it's what things look like," Meg said happily. "We do not know what things look like, as you say," the beast said. "We know what things are like. It must be a very limiting thing, this seeing." "Oh, no," Meg cried. "It's the most wonderful thing in the world. What a very strange world yours must be," the beast said, "that such a particular seeming thing should be of such importance. Try to tell me what is this thing called light, that you are able to do so little without." "Well, we can't see without it," Meg said, realizing that she was completely unable to explain vision in the light and dark. "How can you explain sight on a world where no one has ever seen and where no one have eyes?" "Well, on this planet," she fumbled, "you have a sun, don't you? A most wonderful sun from which comes over warmth and the rays which give us flowers, our food, our music, and all the things which make us life and growth." "Well," Meg said, "when we are turned toward the sun, our earth, our planet, toward our sun, we realize it is light. And then we turn away from its night. And if we want to see what we have to use, artificial lights. Artificial lights, the beast sighed. How very complicated life on your planet must be. Later on, you must try to explain some more to me." "All right," Meg promised. And yet she knew that to explain everything that she could be seen with the eyes would be impossible. Because the beast in some way understood far more complicated than she of her parents, or Calvin, or even Charles Wallace. "Charles Wallace," she cried. "What are they doing about Charles Wallace? We don't know what it's doing to him or making him do. Please, oh, please help us." "Yes, yes, little one, of course we will help you. Meeting is such a session right now to study what is best to do. We have never before been able to talk to anyone who has managed to escape from the Dark Planet. So although your father is blaming himself for everything that has happened, we feel that he must be quite an extraordinary person to get out of comatose with you and at all. But your little boy, and I understand that he is a very special, a very important little boy. Oh, my child, you must accept that there will not be easy to go back through the black thing back to comatose. I don't know. But father left him," Meg said. "He's going to bring him back. He can't just abandon Charles Wallace." The beast's communication suddenly became crisp. Nobody said anything about abandoning anybody. Nobody's going to abandon anybody. Oh, yeah, give me something to drink. There's water. There's water. Ooh. Hush, the beast said. Eat. Someone during the coolness which is now we sleep, and then when you waken, there will be warmth again and many things to do. You must eat now and sleep, and I will stay with you. What should I call you, please? Meg asked. Well, now, first try not to say any words for just a moment. Think within your own mind and think of all the things you can call people with different kinds of people. While Meg thought, the beast murmured to her gently, No mother is a special, a one name, and a father you have here. Not just a friend, nor teacher, nor brother, nor sister. What is an acquaintance? What a fanny, or a hard word, an aunt, maybe. Yes, perhaps that will do. And you think of such an odd words about me. Things and monster. Monster, what a horrid sort of word. I really do not think of a monster. Beast, that will do. Aunt Beast. Aunt Beast, Meg murmured sleepily and laughed. Have I said something funny? Aunt Beast asked in surprise. Isn't Aunt Beast all right? Aunt Beast is lovely, Meg said. Please sing to me, Aunt Beast. If it was impossible to describe such a sight to Aunt Beast, it would be even more impossible to describe the singing of Aunt Beast to human beings. It was a music even more glorious than the music of the singing creatures of Uriel. It was a music more tangible and more form of sight. It had essence and structure. It supported Meg more firmly than the arms of Aunt Beast. It seemed to travel within her, to sweep her aloft in the power of song, so that she was moving in glory among the stars. And for a moment she too felt that the words darkness and light had no meaning, and only this melody was real. Meg did not know what she fell asleep within the body of the music, and when she awakened, Aunt Beast was asleep too. The softness of her fur, faceless hair drooping. Night had gone, and dull gray light filled the room, but she realized now that here on this planet there was no need for color, that the grays and browns merging into each other were not what the beast knew, and that what she herself saw was only the smallest fraction of what the plane was really like. It was she who was limited by her senses, not the blind beast, for they must have senses of which she could not even understand. She stirred slightly, and Aunt Beast bent over her immediately. What a lovely sleep, my darling. Do you feel all right? I feel wonderful, Meg said. Aunt Beast, what is this planet called? Oh, dear, Aunt Beast sighed. I find it not easy at all, but things the way your mind shapes them. You call where you come from Comatose. Well, it's here we come from, but it's not our planet. You can call it Exil. I don't know how to pronounce that. I'll try. I guess Aunt Beast told her we shall share the same sun as lost Comatose, but that gives thanks to is all sure. Are you fighting the black thing, asked? Oh, yes, Aunt Beast replied. I'm doing what we can, never relax. We are called according to his purpose, and whom he calls them, he also justifies. Of course, we have help, and without help, it would be much more difficult. Who helps you, Meg asked. Oh, dear, it's so difficult explaining things to you, small one. And I know that it is not just because you are a child. The other two are hard to reach into as you are. What can I tell you will mean anything to you? Good helps us. The star helps us. Perhaps what you would call light helps us. Love helps us. Oh, my child, I cannot explain. This is something you just have to know or known. But we look at all the things which are what you would call seen, but at the things which are not seen, for the things which are untemporal, but the things which are not seen internal. Aunt Beast, do you know Miss Whatsit? Meg asked with a sudden flooding of hope. Miss Whatsit? Aunt Beast was puzzled. Oh, child, your language is so utterly simple that limited that has the effect of extreme complication. Her forearms tentacles waving with overflung to the gesture of happiness. Would you like me to take you to your father and your Calvin? Oh, yes, please. Let us go, then. They are waiting for you to make plans, and we thought you would enjoy eating, and that is what you call it. Oh, yes, breakfast together. You will be too warm in that heavy fur now. I will dress you with something lighter, and then we will go. Whoa! As though Meg were a baby, Aunt Beast bathed her and dressed her, and this new garment, through it was not made of pale fur, it was lighter than the lightest summer clothes of earth. Aunt Beast put one tentacle arm about Meg's waist and led her through the long, dim corridors in which she could see only shadows of shadows, until they reached a large, calm chamber. Shafts of light came in from the open skylight and covered about a huge, round stone table. Here were seated several of the great beasts, and Calvin and Miss Murray on a stone bench encircled the table. Because the beasts were so tall, even Mr. Murray's feet did not touch the ground, and the Yankee Calvin's long legs dangled as though they were Charles Wallace's. The hall was permanently enclosed by a vault arch leading to long paved walks. There was no empty walls, no covering roofs, so that although the light was so dull in comparison to the earth's sunlight, Meg had no feeling of dark nor of chill. As Aunt Beast led Meg and Miss Murray slid down from the bench and hurried to her, putting his arms about her tenderly. "They promised us you'd be all right," he said. Well, she had been in her Aunt Beast's arms. Meg had felt safe and secure. Now her worries about Charles Wallace and her disappointment in her father's human fidelity rose like gorges in her throat. "I'm fine," she muttered, looking not at Calvin or her father, but at the beast. For it was them she turned now for help. It seemed to her that neither her father nor Calvin were properly concerned about Charles Wallace. "Meg," Calvin said, "you never tasted such food in your life. Come eat." Aunt Beast lifted Meg up onto the bench and sat down beside her and heaped a plate of food, strange fruits and breads that tasted unlike anything Meg had ever eaten. Everything was dull and colorless and unappetizing to look at, and at the first, even remembering the meal Aunt Beast had fed her at that night before, Meg hesitated to taste. But once she had managed the first bite, she ate eagerly. It seemed that she would never have her fill again. The others waited until she slowed down. Then Mr. Murray said gravely, "We are trying to work out a plan to rescue Charles Wallace, since I have made such a mistake in tethering away from it. We feel that it would not be wise for me to try to get back to Comatose even alone. If I miss the mark again, I could easily get lost and wander forever from galaxy to galaxy, and that would be small help to anyone, least of all Charles Wallace." Such a wave of despondency came over Meg that she was no longer able to eat. "Our friends here," he continued, "felt that it was only the fact that I still wore the glasses you or Miss Who gave you that kept me from me within the solar shift, and here are the glasses, Meg. But I'm afraid that the virtue has gone from them, and now they are only glasses. Perhaps they were meant to help only once and only on Comatosis. Perhaps it was going through the black thing that did it." He paused, the glass across the table at her. "These people know about tethering," Calvin gestured at the circle of the great beast, "but they can't do it onto a dark planet. Have you tried to call Miss Whatsit?" Meg asked. "Not yet," her father answered, "but if you haven't thought of anything else, it's the only thing to do." "Father, don't you care about Charles Wallace at all?" At the Aunt Beast stood up, saying child, in a reprobative way. Mr. Murray said nothing, and Meg could see that she had wounded him deeply. She reacted as she would have reacted to Mr. Jenkins. She scrolled down at the table, saying, "We got to ask them for help now. You're just stupid if you think we don't." Aunt Beast spoke to the others that the child is just taught. Don't judge her harshly. She was almost taken back by the black thing. Sometime we can't know what spiritual damage leaves within our physical recovery is complete. Meg looked angrily around the table. The beast sat there silently, motionless. She felt that she was being measured and found wanting. Calvin swung away from her and hunched himself up. "Hasn't it occurred to you that we've been trying to tell you about our ladies? What do you think we've been up to all this time? Just chafing our faces? Okay, you have a shot at it." "Yes, try, child." Aunt Beast seated herself against and pulled Meg beside her. "But I do not understand this feeling of anger I sense in you. What is it about? There's a blame going on and guilt. Why, Aunt Beast, didn't you know?" "No," Aunt Beast said, "but this is not telling me about whatever they are what you want us to know. Try." Meg tried bluntly, fumbling. At first she described Miss Whatsit in her man's coat and multiplied color shawls and scarves. First Who and her white rose and shimmery spectacle. First Witch and her peaked hat and black gown quivering in and out of the body. Then she realized that this was absurd. She was describing only to herself. This wasn't Miss Whatsit or Miss Who or Miss Witch. She might as well have described Miss Whatsit as she was when she was taken on the form of the flying creature of Uriel. "Don't try to use words," Aunt Beast said slowly. "You're just fighting yourself and me. Think about what they are. This look that doesn't help us at all." Meg tried again, but she could not get a visual concept of her mind. She tried to think of Miss Whatsit explaining tethering. She tried to think of them in terms of mathematics. Every once in a while she thought she felt a flicker of understanding from the Aunt Beast or one of the others, but most of the time all that emitted from them was a gentle puzzlement. "Angels!" Calvin shouted suddenly from across the table. "Guardian angels!" They were as moments silent, and he shouted again. His face tense with consternation. Messengers of God!" I thought for a moment. Aunt Beast started them, subsiding aside. "No, it's not clear enough. How strange is it that they can't tell us what they themselves seemed to know. A tall, thin beast murmured. One of the ants' beast tentacled arms went around Meg's waist again. They are very young, and on their Earth, as they call it, they never communicate with other plants. They revolve about all alone in space. Oh, the thin beast said, aren't they lonely? Suddenly, thundering voice vibrated through out the great hall. We are here. The foolish and the weak. That's the last chapter. We're on the last chapter. The foolish and the weak. All right, let's finish this. Meg could see nothing, but she felt her heart pounding with hope. With one accord, all the beasts rose to their feet, turned toward one of the arched openings, and bowed their heads and tentacles in greetings. Miss Wussett appeared, standing between two columns. Beside her came Miss Who, behind them in a quivering of light. The three of them, which somehow not quite the same as they had been with Meg, had first seen them outlines, seemed blurred, colors ran together as though in wet water color painting, but they were there. They were recognizable. They were themselves. Meg pulled herself away from Aunt Beast, jumped to the floor, and rushed at Miss Wussett. But Miss Wussett held up a warning hand, and Meg realized that she was not completely materialized, that she was light and not substance. And embracing her now would have been like trying to hug a sunbeam. We had to hurry, so there wasn't quite time. You wanted us, Miss Wussett asked. The tallest of the beasts bowed again and took a step away from the table and towards Miss Wussett. It is a question of the little boy. Father left him, Meg cried. He left him in comatosis. Apparently, Miss Wussett's voice was cold. And what do you expect us to do? Meg pressed her knuckles against her teeth so that her braces of her skin. Then she flung at her arms apparently. But it's Charles Wallace. It has him. Miss Wussett, save him. Please save him. You know that we cannot do nothing on comatose, Miss Wussett said. Her voice said cold. You mean you'll let Charles be caught by it forever? Meg's voice surely. Did I say that? But we did nothing. You know we can't. We cried. Miss Wussett, you have to save him, Meg. This is our Miss Wussett said sadly. I thought you would know that this is our way. Miss Murray took a step forward and bowed into his Meg's amusement. The three ladies bowed back to him. I don't believe we've been introduced, Miss Wussett said. It's Father. You know it's Father. Meg's angrily impatience grew. Father, Miss Wussett, Miss Who, and Miss Which. I'm very glad to, Miss Murray mumbled. Then he went on, I'm sorry my glasses are broken and I can't see you very well. It's not necessary to see us, Miss Wussett said. If you could teach me enough more about the tessered so that I could get back to comatosis. What then? Come Miss Wussett's rising voice. I'll try to take my child away from it. And you know that you will not succeed. There's nothing left except to try, Miss Wussett spoke gently. I'm sorry we cannot allow you to go. Then let me, Calvin suggested. I'm almost got him away before. Miss Wussett shook her head. No, Calvin, Charles has gone even deeper into it. You will not be permitted to throw yourself in with him. For that you must realize is what would happen. There was a long silence, all the soft rays flittering into the great hall seemed contrary on Miss Wussett, Miss Who, and the faint light that must be Miss Which. No one spoke. One of the beasts moved a tendril slowly back and forth across the stone table. At last Meg could stand it no longer, and she cried out desperately, Then what are you going to do? Are you just going to throw Charles away? Miss Which's voice roared verbally across the hall. Silence, child! But Meg could not be silent. She pressed closely against Aunt Beast, but Aunt Beast did not put the protecting tentacles around her. I can't go, Meg cried. I can't. You know I can't. Did anybody ask you to? The grim voice made Meg's skin prickle into goose flesh. She burst into tears. She started beating at Aunt Beast like a small child having a tantrum. Her tears rained down her face and spattered around Aunt Beast's fur. Aunt Beast stood quietly against the assault. All right, I'll go, Meg sobbed. I know you want me to go. We want nothing from you what you do without grace, Miss Wussett said, or what you do without understanding. Meg's tears stepped as abruptly as they had stood. But I do not understand, she felt, tried, unexpectedly peaceful. Now the coldness that under Aunt Beast's ministration had left her body had also left her mind. She looked toward her father, and her confusion and anger was gone, and she felt only love and pride. She smiled at him, asking forgiveness, and then pressed up against Aunt Beast. This time Aunt Beast's arm went around him. Miss Wussett's voice was grave. What do you do understand? That has to be. It can't be anyone else. I don't understand Charles, but he understands me. I'm the one who's closest to him, Father. Been away for so long since Charles Wallace was a baby. They don't know each other, and Calvin's only known Charles for since a little time. If I had been longer, he would have been the one. But, oh, I see, understand, and I has to be me. There isn't anyone else. Miss Murray had been setting his elbows on his knees, his chins on his fists rose. I will not allow it! Why, Miss Watch's man? Look, I don't know what or who you are, and at this point I don't care. I will not allow my daughter to go alone into danger. Why? You know what the outcome will probably be, and she's weak, now weaker than what she was before. She's almost been unalived by that black thing. I fail to understand how you could even consider such a thing. Calvin jumped down. Maybe it. Right about you, or maybe you're in league with it. I'm the one to go if anybody goes. Why did you bring me along at all? To take care of Meg. You said to yourself. But you have done that, Miss Watts assured her. I haven't done anything, Calvin shouted. You can't send Meg. I won't allow it. I'll put my foot down. I won't permit it. Don't you see that you're making something that is already hard for Meg even harder, Miss Watson asked him. Aunt Beast turned tentacles toward Miss Watson. It's strong enough to tess her again. You know what she had been through. If which she takes her, she could manage, Miss Watson said. If it will help, I could go too and hold her, Aunt Beast's arms around Meg tightly. Oh, Aunt Beast, Meg shouted. But Miss Watson cut her off. No, I was afraid not, Aunt Beast said humbly. I just wanted you to know that I would. What's it? Miss Murray frowned and pushed his hair back from his face, and he shoved with his middle finger at his nose as though he were trying to get his spectacles close to his eyes. Are you remembering that she's only a child? And she's backward, Calvin bowed. I resent that, Meg said hotly, hoping that indignation would control her trembling. I'm better than you at math, and you know it. Don't you have the courage to go alone, Miss Weston asked. Meg's voice was flat. No, but it doesn't matter. She turned to her father and Calvin. You know it's the only thing to do. You know that they'd send me alone if... How do we know they're not in league with it, Miss Murray demanded. Father! No, Meg, Miss Watson said. I do not blame your father for being angry with suspicious and frightening, and I cannot pretend that we are doing anything but sending you into the gravest kind of danger. I have to acknowledge quite openly that it may be a fatal danger. I know this, but I do not believe it. And the happy medium doesn't believe it either. Can't you see what's going on to happen, Calvin said. Oh, not in this kind of thing, Miss Watson sounded surprised at the question. If we knew ahead of time what was going to happen, we'd like the people of Commonwealth with no lives on our own, with everything all planned and done for us. How can I explain it to you? Oh, I know it. In your language, you have a form of poetry called the sonnet. Yes, Calvin said impatiently. What's that got to do with the happy medium? Kindly pay him the courtesy of listening to him, Miss Watson's voice was stern, and for a moment Calvin stopped pawing the ground like a nervous colt. It was a very strict form of poetry, is it not? Yes. There are 14 lines, I believe, in all the Lambel pentameter. That's very strict rhythm of matter, yes? Yes, Calvin nodded. And each line has to end with a rigid rhyme pattern. And if the poet does not do it exactly the way, it is not a sonnet, is it? No. But within the strict form, the poet has completed freedom to say whatever he wants, doesn't he? Yes, Calvin nodded again. So Miss Watson says, so what? Oh, do not be stupid, boy, Miss Watson scolded. You know perfectly well that I'm driving at. You mean you're comparing our lives to a sonnet, a strict form, but freedom within it? Yes, Miss Watson said. You're given the form, but you have to write the sonnet yourself. What you say is completely up to you. Please, Meg said, please, if I got to go, what to go, and I get it over with. Each minute you put it off makes it harder. Shh, she's all right, boomed Miss Witch voice. Lit, it's time. You may say goodbye, Miss Watson was giving her not permission, but a command. Meg courtesied clumsily to the beast. Thank you all very much. I know you saved my life. She did not add what she could not help thinking. Saved it for what? So that it could get it. She put her arms about Aunt Beast, pressed up softly against his fur. Thank you, she whispered. I love you. And I you, little one. Aunt Beast pressed gently tendrils against her face. Calvin, Meg said, holding out her hand. Calvin came in her and took her hand and then drew her roughly to him and kissed her. He didn't say anything that he turned away before he had a chance to see the surprising happiness and the brightness in Meg's eyes. At last she turned to Father. I'm sorry, Father. He took her hands and bent down to her with a sort of eyes. Sorry for what, Meg trun? Tears almost came to her eyes in a gentle use of the old nickname. I wanted you to do it all for me. I wanted everything to be all simple. So I tried to pretend that it was all your fault because I was scared and I didn't want to have to do anything myself. But I wanted to do it for you, Miss Murray said. That's what every parent wants. He looked into her dark, frightening eyes. I won't let you go, Meg. I'm going. No, Miss What's-It voice was sterner than Meg had ever heard it. You are going to allow Meg the privilege of accepting this danger. You are a wise man, Mr. Murray. You are going to let her go. Miss Murray sighed. He drew Meg close to him. Little Megspre, don't be afraid. We will try to have courage for you. This is all we can do. Your mother. Mother was always shoving me out of the world, Meg said. She want me to do this. She knows she would tell her. She started choking, held up her head and said, No, never mind. I'll tell her myself. Good girl. Of course you will. Now Meg walked slowly around to the great table where Miss What's-It was still posed between the columns. Are you going with me? No, only Miss Witch. The black thing, fear made her voice tremble. With father tessered me through it. It almost got me. Your father is singularly inexperienced, Miss What's-It said. Though a fine man, he worth teaching at the moment, he still treats tessering as though he were working with a machine. We will not let that black thing get you, I don't think. She was not exactly comforting. The momentary vision and faith that had come to the Meg dwindled. But suppose I can't get Charles Wallace away from it. Stop, Miss What's-It held up her hand. We gave you gifts the last time we took you to Comatose. We will not let you go empty-handed this time. But what we can give you now is nothing you can touch with your hands. I give you my love, Meg. Never forget that my love, always. Miss Who's eyes shining behind spectacles beamed. At Meg felt in her blaze, pocketed and handed back the spectacles she had used to Comatose. The next book is... We're going on a journey. We're going on to the Misty Mountains. We're doing The Hobbit is our next book. The Hobbit is our next book. Your father is right, Miss Who. Took the spectacles which hid themselves and the folds of the robes. The venture is gone from him, and what I have to give you is time. You must try to understand, not word by word, but a flash of understanding, the Tesseract. The fullness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For we see you calling me of now. Not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty. Not many noble are called by God, but have chosen the foolish things of the world to comfort the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things and the world to comfort the things for which are mighty. A base things of the world and things which are desperate to have God chosen, yet the things which are not to bring to the not these things are. So yeah, this one is also... That's why I compare these two together, because we got we have the Christian undertones with these, with the angels and all that. But that C.S. Lewis is good for that too. Miss What's-It voice came through the samer. I cannot hold your hand, child. Immediately Meg was swept into darkness, into the nothingness, and then into the ice, devouring. They seemed crunching the bones. Then they were through it, and they were standing breathlessly at her feet as the same hill on which they had first landed on Comatose. She was cold, numb, but no worse than she had often been in the winter. In the contrary, when she had spent afternoon skating on the pond, she looked around. She was completely alone. Her heart began to pound. Then, seeming to echo from all around her, came Miss Witch's unforgettable voice. I have not given you my gift. You have something that it has not. This something is yours only weapon, but you must find it for yourself. The voice ceased, and Meg knew that she was alone. She walked slowly down the hill, and her heart thumping painfully against her ribs. Below her was the same row of identical houses they had seen before, and beyond these the linear buildings of the city. She walked along the quiet street. It was dark, and the street was desert. No children playing ball or skipping. Meg walked down the street. All the lights were extinguished simultaneously. Was it because of her presence, or was it simply that it was time for lights out? She felt numb beyond rage or disappointed or even fear. She put one foot ahead of the other with precious regularity, not allowing her pace to lag. She was now thinking. She was now playing. She was simply walking slowly but steadily toward the city and the domed building where it was. Now she approached the outline building of the city, and each of them was a vertical line of light. But it was dim, eerily light, not the warm light of the stairways in the city's home. and there was no isolated bright light windows where someone was working late or an office was being cleaned out of each building. Come one man, perhaps a watchman, and each man started walking the width of the building. They appeared not to see her. At any rate, they paid no attention to whatsoever she went on to pass them. What have I got that it hasn't got, she thought. Suddenly, what have I possibly got? Now she was walking by the tallest building, more dim, vertical. Thank you for the rows. Lines of that light walls generally glowed slight to the faint illumination of the streets. Central intelligence was ahead of her. Was the man with red eyes still sitting there, or was he allowed to go to bed? But this was not where she must go, though the man with the red eyes seemed the kind of old gentleman he claimed to be with whom compared with it. But he was no longer of consequence in the search for Charles Wallace. She must go directly to it. It wasn't used to being resisted. Father said that how he managed and how Calvin and I managed as long as we did. Father saved me then. There's nobody here to save me now. I have to do it myself. I have to resist it by myself. Is that what I have that it hasn't got? No, I'm not sure. It can resist. It just isn't used to having other people resist. I know, like, is this it? The it that inspired Stephen King's It? I don't know. Central intelligence blocked with his huge regularity, the end of square. She turned to the walk around it, and almost impenetrable with steps. It was not far to get dome, which housed it. I'm going to Charles Wallace. That wasn't important. That's what I have to think of it. I wish I could feel numb again the way I did the first. Suppose it was somehow else. Suppose it wasn't there. I have to get there first. Anyhow, there's the only way I can find it. Her steps go slower and slower as she passed the great bronze doors. Just imagine if you were playing a drinking game with the word it for the story. The huge slabs of central intelligence beyond as she finally saw on her strange light pulsing dome of it. Her father said it was all right for him to be afraid. He sat down, go ahead and be afraid. It was first who said, I don't understand what she said, but I think it was meant to make it me that hate it beyond anyone, and it was being that way I am. And Miss Whatsit said to remember that she loves me. That's what I have to think about, not about being afraid or not as smart as it. Miss Whatsit loves me. That's quite something to be loved by something like Miss Whatsit. She was there. No matter how slowly her feet had taken her, at the end they had taken her. Directly ahead of her was the circular building, its walls glowing with violet flame, its slivery roof pulsing with a light that seemed to Meg to be insane. Again she could feel the light, neither warm nor cold, but she reached out to touch it, pulling her towards it. There was sudden sucking, and she was within it, as though the wind had been knocked out of her. She grasped her breath and her own rhythm, not the premature pulsing of it. She could feel the inscrutable beat within her body, controlling her heart and lungs, but not herself, not Meg. It did not quite give her the same blinking eyes rapidly again the rhythm until the redness before them cleared, and she could see. There was the brain, there was it, lying, pulsing, quivering on the dais, softening, pose, and nose-saining. Charles Wallace was crouched beside it, his eyes still swelling, trilling, his jaw still slack, as she had seen him before, with a tick in his forehead, reiterating the revolting rhythm of it. All right. As she saw him, it was again as though she had been punched in the stomach, for she had realized herself that he was seeing Charles, and yet it was not Charles at all. Where was Charles Wallace, her own beloved Charles Wallace? Was it, I have got that it hasn't got? You have nothing that it hasn't got, Charles Wallace said coolly. How nice to have you back, dear sister. We have been waiting for you. We knew that Miss Whatsit would send you. She is our friend, you know. For an appalling moment, Meg believed that in that moment she felt her brain being gathered up into it. No, she screamed at the top of her lungs. No, you lie. For a moment she was free from its clutches again. As long as I can stay angry enough, it can't get me. Is that what I have that it doesn't have? Nonsense, Charles Wallace said. You have nothing that it doesn't have. You're lying, she replied. She felt only anger towards the boy who was not Charles Wallace at all. No, it was not anger. It was loathing. It was hatred, sear and adultery. And as she became lost in hatred, she began to be lost in it. The red mesra swam before her eyes, and her stomach turned in its rhythm. Her body trembled with the strength of her hatred and the strength of it. With the last verge of consciousness, she jerked her mind and body. Hate was nothing that it didn't have. It knew all about hate. You are lying about that. You are lying about Miss Whatsit, she screamed. Miss Whatsit hates you, Charles Wallace said. And that was where it made its fatal mistake. For as she said automatically, Miss Whatsit loves me. That's what she told me. She loves me. Suddenly she knew. She knew. Love. That's what she had that it did not have. She had Miss Whatsit's love and her father and her mother's and the real Charles Wallace love and the twins and Aunt Beast. And she had her love for them. But how could she use it? What was she meant to do? If she could give love to it, perhaps it would shrivel up and be unalive, for she was sure that it could not withstand love. But she, in all her weakness and foolishness and brashness and nothingness, was incapable of loving it. Perhaps it was not too much to ask of her, but she could not do it. But she could love Charles Wallace. She could stand there and she could love Charles Wallace, her own Charles Wallace, the real Charles Wallace, the child for whom she had come back to it, the baby who was so much more than she was and who was yet utterly invaluable. She could love Charles Wallace. Charles Wallace, I love you. My baby brother who always takes care of me. Come back to me. Charles Wallace. Come away from it. Come back home. I love you, Charles Wallace. Oh, Charles, I love you. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, but she was unaware of them. Now she was even able to look at him, at the animated thing that was not her own Charles Wallace at all. She was unable to look and love. I love you, Charles Wallace. You are my darling and my dear and the light of my life and the treasure of my heart, and I love you, I love you, I love you. Slowly the mouth closed. Slowly his eyes stopped to twirl. The tick in his forehead ceased, and his revolting twitch slowly he advanced toward her. I love you, she cried. I love you, Charles Wallace. I love you. Then suddenly he was running, pelting. He was in her arms, and he was shrieking with sobs. Meg, 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 I love you, Charles, she cried again, her sobs almost as loud as her tears mingling with his. I love you, I love you, I love you. A whirl of darkness, an icy cold blast, an angry, resentful howl that seemed to tear through her. Darkness again. Though the darkness to save her came a sense of Miss West's presence, so that she knew that could not be it who had her in her clutches, and then the feel of earth beneath her, and something in her arms, and she was rolling over on the sweat-swelling autumn earth, and Charles Wallace was crying out, Meg, oh Meg! Now she was hugging him close to him, and his little arms were clutched tightly about her neck. Meg, you saved me, he said over and over again. Meg, come, I call. And there were her father and Calvin hurling through the darkness toward him. Still holding Charles, she struggled to stand up and looked around. Father, Cal, where are you? Charles Wallace, holding her hand tightly, was holding around too, and suddenly he laughed. His own sweet, contagious laugh in the twins' vegetable garden. He landed in the broccoli. Meg began to laugh too at the same time as she was trying to hug her father, to hug Calvin, and not to let go of Charles Wallace for one thing. Meg, you did it, Calvin shouted. You saved me, Charles. I'm very proud of you, my daughter. Mr. Murray kissed her gravely and turned towards the house. Now I must go to Mother. Meg could tell that he was trying to control his anxiety and eagerness. Look, she pointed to the house, and there were the twins and Mr. Murray walking towards them through the log white glass. First thing tomorrow, I must go get some new glasses, Mr. Murray said, squinting in the moonlight, and then shouting to run towards his wife. Denny's voice came across over the yawn. Hey, Meg, it's bedtime. Sandy suddenly yelled, Father. Mr. Murray was running across the lawn, Miss Murray running towards him, and they were in each other's arm. And then there was a tremendous happy jumble of arms and legs and hugging, and older Murrays and Meg and Charles Wallace and the twins and Calvin grinning by then, until Meg reached out and pulled him, and Miss Murray's gave him a special hug and all his own. They were talking and laughing and all at once, and when they started by cash, and he could bring back all of his happiness, not 1 second longer, compelled his sleek black body right through the screen door in the kitchen. He dashed across the lawn to joy the joy, and almost knocked them all over in the exuberance of his greeting. Meg knew all at once that Miss Whatsit, Miss Who, and Miss Which must be near, because all for her she felt a flooding of joy and love that was even greater and deeper than joy and love which was already there. She stopped laughing and listening, and Charles Wallace too. Hush! Then there was a whirling, and Miss Whatsit, Miss Who, and Miss Which were standing in front of them, and the joy of love was so tangible that Meg felt that it was she only knew where to reach. She could touch and it with her bare hands. Miss Whatsit, she breathlessly, oh, my darling, I'm sorry we didn't have time to say goodbye to you properly. You see, we have to. But they never learned what it was that Miss Whatsit, Miss Who, and Miss Which had to do, for there was a gust of wind, and they were gone. Wow! So we finished A Wrinkle in Time. And our next book is An Unexpected Journey to the Misty Mountains. We're going to read The Hobbit next. This book is interesting. The ending, I guess the brain is gone. I'm not 100% sure. Doesn't really tell you. I guess, but she made it back home. Was it all in her head? I don't know. But yeah, I like this book more for its science and all that stuff of putting the string theory in it. But it's another one of these juvenile fictions where Harry Potter made very famous around this time, where we have young adults going on an adventure to save the world. You know, started with The Wizard of Oz, very similar type of story. The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, very similar. Young protagonists is saving the world, and Wrinkle in Time. Another good example of that would be Alice in Wonderland as well. So, we have finished A Wrinkle in Time. This is Professor Fox's Cozy Corner, and thank you for joining me. And we are signing off, and we have finished A Wrinkle in Time.